Hey guys, welcome back to more Karen stories. In this video, a racist, ridiculous Karen wants me kicked out of the hospital claiming her life is more valuable than mine, simply because I am not a local. Here is what happened. Let's dive right into the video. The first one starts like this. So for context, we live in the United States. We get it, this only happens to us. We recently got a $4,000 hospital bill for an overnight stay with a minor surgery for our son. This was after our insurance paid $16,000. We got our secondary insurance to pay an additional $1,500 but had $2,500 left out of pocket. What now? Well, the hospital has a financial assistance program. We qualify for it. Hooray, right? Well, not right. They find out that we have an FSA, basically a credit card that can only be used for medical expenses, and they wanna wipe out the FSA before they will look at our income. The FSA really should count as part of our annual income, but alas. My husband is pretty resigned to this and ready to fork over our whole FSA, but I'm pretty salty about it. We got a decent amount left on the FSA, but this is all for our appointments for the year. We only have weeks to pay this bill or have it sent to collections, so not enough time to schedule a bunch of necessary appointments. ETA, this is after the many hoops/documentation the supplemental insurance required and finally paid. This had run our clock down, and I assure everyone we did our due diligence and requested an itemized bill. Our other option, as many have mentioned, was a payment plan, but this would be for the full remaining amount and we would see no reduction in the bill. If the FSA did not exist, we qualified for a 75% to 100% reduction. This is not pulling a fast one. Had they reduced the bill, we would have used the FSA to pay it, but they wouldn't do that. I'm determined not to let the entirety of this thing go to the hospital because I know if they looked at our income, the rest of the bill would probably be dropped or significantly reduced. So what to do? I bought every FSA eligible item I could think of on Amazon that we may need over the next 6 months. Another ETA, I addressed this in the comments, but it's perfectly legal to use your FSA like this, and you should. There are many qualifying items and you don't need a prescription. I learned a lot from the comments, and if nothing else, I hope this post can help someone. Took about half of the FSA out in a week, just in time for our final notice. Collections or payment plan. We pay with what we have left of the FSA, and then they finally run our numbers. Q, call that rest of bill is indeed dropped because we qualified for the reduction. As my final ETA, to everyone who says, that's what flexible spending is for. Well, collecting the funds a family has for a year of medical expenses is predatory AF if you know that they otherwise qualify to pay $0 through your own hospital's financial assistance program. This upset me a whole hell of a lot. This is why I used what I could on things that I know we need and use first. And yeah, ripe stars, by the way, if you have any hospital, let's just call them horror stories because this story really made me stressed, then please feel free to share them in the comments or on r/ripe stories on Reddit. Either way, the next one is the title story, which is titled Racist Local Karen Wants Me Kicked Out of Hospital, Claims Her Life is More Valuable Because I Am Just a Dirty Beggar/Expat, according to her racist tirade. So I'm a person who really likes to travel. I like to learn a lot about other countries and their cultures. When I travel, it's for long periods of time coupled with heavy research, especially about the country's language. I pick up languages super quickly, so I try to learn as much of the country's language as I can before I travel there. It makes navigating easier, people are friendlier, and shopkeepers don't scam you out of a few extra pounds. For context, I'm a white guy from the UK, so I obviously stand out as a foreigner when I am in non-European countries. A lot of shopkeepers try to charge you extra if they know that you're a foreigner and don't understand the language. So I highly recommend learning the language of whatever country you're visiting just to help yourself out. It makes for a cool party trick and opens doors to a lot of different cultures. Anyway, I met my now wife on a trip to Asia a few years ago while visiting her home country. We hit it off and after 3 years we got married. She lived with me in the UK for a bit before we decided to move permanently to her homeland so she could stay close to her family and raise our future kids in a place where they would be surrounded by their culture. I did not mind, it's harder to teach them the native language and the customs when you're living in a westernized country. We moved in together to one of the major cities in the country because of better work opportunities there, but we visit my wife's home province annually to see her family. This time around, the family decided to go hiking in one of the mountainous regions outside the province. I backpacked a lot in my travels and I love hiking, so I thought it would be fun. However, it had recently rained in that area, so the trail was very muddy and slippery. The guides told us to be careful, and although I tried, I ended up slipping off a rock as I was climbing down. The fall was not from a great height, but I did end up breaking my right leg. We called an ambulance and I was brought to the nearest hospital. Because it was a small town, the hospital was very small, but it got the job done. My injury was not that bad, but I did have to stay in the hospital for a few days until I was well enough to walk, at least with crutches. Luckily, my wife and I made the decision to buy insurance before we went hiking, just in case something happened while we were on the trail. I'm grateful that she knows me and my clumsy tendencies so well. The insurance covered everything from the ambulance fee to the hospital stay, so I didn't have to worry. My wife and her family stayed with me for a bit, but I felt bad making them stay overnight at the hospital because of my own clumsiness, so I told them to go home since I was okay. It took a lot of convincing, but they eventually left and I passed the time by sleeping or reading, and the next morning I woke up to loud screaming. I was worried that someone was seriously injured, but the closer I listened, the more I realized that this sounded more angry rather than panicked. I'm nosy, so I asked my nurse to draw back the curtain so I could see what was going on here. A woman was shouting loudly, clutching her chest. She was yelling about how she needed to see a doctor right away. A nurse approached her, asking about her symptoms. The woman said that her head was feeling strange, that it hurt to swallow, and that breathing was difficult. The nurse told her to wait there while she retrieved a thermometer, but the woman kept shouting about how she needed to see a real doctor and that she needed a private room to rest her head. The nurse returned, took her temperature, and said that she only had a common flu, advising her to rest at home. But the woman was not having any of it. She kept screaming that the nurse was wrong and that she needed to stay at the hospital. Mind you, the hospital was crowded. Like I said, it was a small hospital and a lot of the beds in the ward were full of elderly patients who constantly needed help. If you've ever taken care of anyone elderly, you know that they always need someone to help them, whether it is to relieve themselves, eat, or put on clothes. There were only a few nurses and they were all running around trying to help the patients as much as possible, so this lady, who did not even have that serious of a problem, in my opinion, would not have been any help to them. The nurse kindly told her that there were no available rooms or beds and that her cold could be treated at home. She did not take this too well and started shouting more, and then she saw me. And by the way, Ripe Star's funny fact here, one of the big cultural differences I noticed between Europe and Asia, at least so far, here in most Asian countries you don't really have family doctors, which is a big thing in Europe, and basically family doctors are that you have a doctor who is responsible for you and your family, and for any smaller stuff, so not like if you break your arm, but just smaller things like a cold or anything like that, you go to your family doctor. However, if you have anything here, especially in Thailand, you simply go to the hospital and nobody bats an eye. To be honest, I'm not exactly sure what's better. However, there's one thing that really irritates me. Here in Thailand, they really love to prescribe antibiotics. And I'm not anti-medicine at all or something, but it seems they really love antibiotics a little bit too much, even for small stuff. Anyway, if glares could get a trophy based on how deadly they were, hers definitely took the cake. She pointed at me saying, "Why does that dirty foreigner get a bed and not me? Look at his clothes. He looks like a pig that just rolled in the mud. I will pay money to take his bed. He's probably a beggar and cannot afford this hospital anyway." For some context, I was still in the clothes I'd been wearing while hiking. She further said, "I was born here. This foreigner's life is worth less than mine. What the F's going on here? Why do we even provide medical service to this scum?" She referred to me with a lot of derogatory terms, both offensive and straight up racist, while speaking to the nurse, and demanded that a foreigner like me should be kicked out because she, a native, should take priority. Obviously, she is saying all of this thinking that I'm simply a dumb foreigner who doesn't understand the language. But of course I do. Now at this point she has gathered the attention of everyone in the hospital ward. All the nurses stopped what they were doing to watch the scene, and even some of the patients stayed awake to watch it all unfold. I remember an old man next to me shaking his head in disapproval. One of the nurses left to get the doctor. When the doctor came, she said, "Finally!" and started talking again about her symptoms. The doctor cut her off and explained to her that she was causing a disturbance here and that patients were seen based on the severity of their conditions, not their social or national status. This did the opposite of calming her down though. Just when I thought her yelling couldn't get any louder, she started screaming about how she was gonna give this hospital a low rating and sue them because they were prioritizing a white foreigner over a native. That is when she approached my bed, put her hands on my shoulders and tried to shove me off. I'm a pretty heavy bloke, so she had a hard time getting me off. I had been enjoying watching the drama unfold until now, so I told her in her native language that just because I was a foreigner, I didn't deserve to be evicted from my hospital bed all because she had a cold. I gestured to my broken leg and said that I had better reasons to be resting on a bed than she did. Then, in a moment of spite, I said she could have the bed if she repeated all those lovely things she said about me to my face. Her face turned absolutely bright red and said that she didn't know that I could speak the language. She mumbled some other excuses, but I didn't care enough to hear them. The doctor took the woman aside and told her that because of the disturbance and chaos she created, she would have to be at the bottom of the waiting list and would be treated when they've gone through everyone. And to my surprise, the woman did not argue but looked extremely pissed as the nurses led her away. My nurse apologized for the situation and asked if I needed anything. I told her that it was not her fault and that she should not be apologizing. I don't know what happened to that woman, but my guess is that she was sent home after long hours of waiting, since all she had was a cold. As for me, the hospital discharged me after 3 days. When I came back, I told my wife and her family about what happened with the lady at the hospital, and well, needless to say, they had a laugh about it, and this is again why you should learn languages, so you can learn if people are talking about you behind your back. And yeah guys, I hope this entitled racist Karen learned her lesson and she deserved the embarrassment. The next one is titled, "My wife drives like a maniac and endangers our children. Am I the a-hole for wanting to divorce her because of it?" So my wife had 2 kids before we got married and they have an actively involved father. We have had 2 children of our own. My wife is a terrible driver, but she refuses to acknowledge this. She has been in multiple accidents and even had her license suspended. Not for a DUI or anything, just because she's a bad driver. She will do stuff like reach into the backseat to deal with a kid rather than either pull over or let me or one of the older kids deal with it. And she got T-boned in August last year because she took her foot off the brake at a red light to pick up my son's soother that had fallen out. She did not put the car in park. Thankfully only she was injured, all 4 kids were in the car. I've had it. I told her that she's welcome to endanger herself and her kids, but that if I'm in the car or if our children are in the car, she will keep her eyes on the road and her hands on the steering wheel. She is finally at the point in her rehab where she can drive again. I reminded her of what I said and I told her that I loved her. I said that her older kids were important to me and that I loved them too. But I told her that if she ever decided to do stupid stuff while driving, our relationship would be over and I would make it part of our divorce that she not be allowed to drive with my kids in the car. She started crying and said that she didn't do it on purpose. I asked her how exactly she took her hands off the wheel, took off her seatbelt, took her foot off the brake and turned around to pick up the soother by accident. She said that I'm treating her like an idiot. I don't think I am. My children have to be safe, and before you ask, I try and do as much of the driving as I possibly can. I've stopped drinking when we go out. I traded in my car that I loved for an SUV, so there's room for all of us, and I also offered to pay for Uber, so she didn't have to drive if I wasn't available. She actually likes driving though. Her ex and her parents are on my side. He also told her that if she ever thinks about endangering his kids, and he would either go for full custody or ask that she be barred from driving with his kids in the car. Her parents have threatened to stop helping her pay her stupid high insurance premiums, and she thinks we are being unfair because she loves her kids and would never intentionally harm them. She just loses concentration when one of the kids needs something and doesn't think to ask for help. Some people in the comments said the following: "The part I'm hung up on is, you don't care how she drives with her kids or if she's alone. If you care about her, you should. This part is alienating. The topic itself though, not the a-hole. How you're approaching it sounds like you're the a-hole though. By the way, I'm not defending her feelings, I'm saying all kids should be protected." And yeah, ripe stars by the way, let me know what you think about this. Do you think OP is acting like the a-hole here or not? I'm very curious about what your opinion is. And OP responded, "You have no idea how many times I've begged her to drive safely, but I agree that I should have been nicer." And another user said, "You're the a-hole, she's already shown you she's a horrible driver, why do you keep giving her changes? Tell her she doesn't drive with any kids anymore, her whole excuse of, 'I didn't do it on purpose.' She can say at the eulogy of your dead kid. Why are you guys giving her more chances? She can kill herself if she wants, but all kids should not be in a car when she's behind the wheel. Any kids need a driver and you/X are busy, then it's an Uber. No excuse and no more chances." OP answered, "That's where we are at now. Our older kids have told her straight up that they will get out of the car or call the cops if she cannot be safe." Another person said, "It is the, when it's just her and her kids, but not me and my kids. You're a family, and this distinction alone makes you an a-hole regardless of how horrible she's at driving. If it's that bad, you just drive." And also, love your spouse's kids as your own, otherwise what's the point of being a family? You remind me of my own stepmother because this is how she feels about me, and even after 20 years it still hurts. OP then said, time number 5, I contacted her ex-husband to deal with her regarding their kids from the hospital on the day of the accident. I made sure his kids as well as mine were okay, and I told him that I was basically forbidding her from driving my kids around, but obviously I could not do that for his. He was at the hospital within half an hour and he agreed with me. Update to the story, am I the a-hole for initiating a divorce while my wife is in the hospital after a car accident? So my wife was involved in a single vehicle accident. She was seriously injured, but thank goodness no one else was in the car with her. So I've spoken to her about her driving habits and I warned her. I went to see her in the hospital and then I went to a lawyer. I'm also going for full custody with only supervised visitation for her. I'm sick to death of her driving habits and I will not wait for her to injure or kill one of our kids with her BS. I feel bad for doing this while she's in the hospital and facing charges, but I cannot take any more chances on her. And then some comments said, can you tell us more about her driving habits, her age, her health? Is she driving drunk? Is it something that can be worked on or is she willing to change? 100,000% the kid's safety comes first, period. But are you ready to enter marriage without exhausting all possible options? Or maybe you have and those details are not in your post. Forgive the questions. OP said, she has been in several serious accidents from getting distracted while driving. She was still doing rehab from her last accident where this one happened. And yeah, ripe stars, just for understanding because maybe it's confusing, this post is an update to the last one and basically OP's wife has since then been in another serious accident once again. So that's why OP is getting so serious about this now. Someone else said, not the a-hole, I remember your last post. Protect yourself and your kids. OP said, I cannot believe it happened this quickly, I'm just glad none of the kids were with her. Another user said, I definitely understand that. Has she said anything about the new accident? Realized that she got a problem or something? If I remember right, she was very upset about you stating that she should not drive with the kids in the car anymore. OP answered, she left some paperwork in the backseat, so she parked and then she went to grab it. Unfortunately, she left the car in gear and stepped on the gas and drove into a canal by the mall. I'm just done with it all. And yeah, ripe stars, I'm definitely agreeing with OP here. I think he's doing the right thing, however, I'm surprised he hasn't done this earlier. His wife, right from the get-go, how he described her, seems so irresponsible, and it is absolutely ridiculous how she endangered her own children. And the next one is a malicious compliance story. I, 33 male, often do the cooking at home, including the washing up that happens after. My wife, 34 female, does not usually cook. We established that by our second date years ago. I love her to bits, but she is a culinary disaster, and time and sweat has failed to make improvements. It's a lost battle. The sequence of dinner prep usually starts as soon as I finish work. This involves chopping meat, vegetables, and rounding up anything that was previously marinated or thawed. This is immediately followed by cooking and then serving to be eaten hot. It seems logical to me that meals should be enjoyed while they are fresh and cleaning up can wait, especially if the kitchen is not being used by anyone else in the interim. I'm also the one who normally does the washing after everyone has eaten, and I wash all the cutlery and cooking prep stuff in the same process. This is done while my wife settles our toddler into bed. I prefer this setup because I can get all the washing done in one go and everyone can eat their meals at the same time together while it is fresh. I don't like washing the pans and pots and wok after cooking and before eating. My wife, however, seems to get annoyed at this. Every now and then, while I'm cooking, if she walks in, she will start complaining, making notes that I should pack this and that up, that I should clean the board while waiting for the stir-fry to finish. Sometimes there's literally no downtime for certain dishes, especially with several to serve before it gets too late for the toddler. To be clear, I certainly clean some things as I go, especially when it concerns raw meat or things that need to go back into the fridge. I will wipe down if there's any offensive spills, but for things like chopping boards, certain empty packages or condiments, I will leave them on the bench top until I'm done or when I'm washing up. Things that I feel don't pose risks or have any urgency to be put away other than making the kitchen look tidy during cooking. Happy to be proven wrong. Anyway, one day for whatever reason, my wife got real snarky at me because I left the chopping board out next to the pans, saying it's not hard to clean as I cook. Whatever, fine, so for the next meal, I made sure to clean everything I touched as I started my meal prep. I had already made sure the little one had her dinner, so there's no harm in drawing this out. Need to open that can of pasta sauce? Better wash down the can opener and dry it before we start. Gotta wipe down the whole kitchen top too. Oops, dropped a garlic clove. I better give the whole kitchen floor a good scrub. Is that a bit of charred residue on the stove? Okay, better degrease the entire area. You get my drift. My wife has put the little one to sleep by now. So 3 hours later, the kitchen is sparkling, literally. Pasta has not entered the water and the sauce materials have not touched the pan. My wife asks where's the dinner. I tell her I have not started cooking because I still need to clean the fridge. There were some stains under the tomato tray. She went back to bed. I still cooked and packed her lunch. I've not been harassed since. Edit, there's no expectation for my wife to clean. I've made it clear that I'm happy to do it as I clean up messes I make. We split our duties so she spends that time on other things that need attention around the house. And yeah guys, with this we have reached the end of the video. However, if you cannot get enough of my content, please don't forget to subscribe to the channel to not miss any of my daily uploads. And also check out my podcast by searching for Ripe Stories on Spotify, Amazon, Audible and other podcast platforms. You will often find exclusive episodes and early access to new content. Furthermore, please check out my Patreon by going to patreon.com/ripeyoutube or my YouTube membership program for even more exclusive stories. Thank you so much and I will see you again tomorrow.